It is Wednesday, September 4th, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a very casual, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. I actually had 2 days off, unintentionally, but sometimes you gotta get a little time in with the old people and put a little time on the water with them and just let them know you're appreciating them, So yeah, I did that on Tuesday, and on Monday, the gym was closed, so there was no early nor even late jiu-jitsu, and that just threw my entire day off. I really need to start with some jiu-jitsu, man. But anyway, the whole thing kind of screwed my week up. But today we did some exciting stuff. We did some working from a position I hardly ever find myself in, but I have found myself in, and that's when you have your opponent, you're on your butt, and you're kind of in an open guard position, and your opponent has wrapped their arms around your legs. And now this is actually the start of Nurmagomedov's little kind of signature move where he grabs around your legs and then he works up to your thighs really quick, flattens out your legs, and then ties them up in a triangle position. Like it has his legs triangling both of your legs, and then he's able to just sit up and just ground and pound on you, And so anyway, we were working a little bit of that today, in both how to get out of it and also the progress of it, to do it on somebody. And then also we worked a way to get around to the back from, I'm trying to remember, I think it was just regular, but like if you're at a butterfly guard and your opponent tries to, if you're on your knees and your opponent is in a butterfly guard and is trying to arm drag you in, and working it from there to a kind of a reversal position to where you got your arm over their back and hooking that opposite hip, and you're getting ready to do the back take position. And I almost found myself in that position exactly with my sparring partner afterward, but not entirely. It was just cut just a teeny tiny bit short, man. If I had just a little bit more time, I probably could have taken it there. But sparring was pretty casual. I was feeling more experimental today and not as much pressure oriented. I mean, like, really. I'll be honest, my style with regard to jiu-jitsu is more akin to like a magma flow, where I'm just trying to crush you. And I've had periods of time where I've tried to get around that, get to where I'm more mobile and more fleet on my foot, but today I was just feeling like I wanted to concentrate on less actual effort to control my opponent's position. And I did manage to get to side control really easy today, and it didn't require any explosive movements or anything like that. Just providing my opponent with a pool of magma to play with. It's like as soon as the gap would open up, I would fill it with something. I put like a knee in there or an ankle in there or an elbow in there. I might grab the arm that's closest to it and hold it open while I move my knee up to it. And so that's kind of what I mean with regard to being like a magma flow, where I solidify and turn into rock behind every single opening you give me. And so I had a little bit of trouble with one opponent where I was trying to get into a guard past position, but she was being very, very wily about the way she was positioning her body, and I think next time what I'm going to do to try and get around that is I'm going to maneuver around to her front, be containing the arms, right, by either wrapping all the way around them or, just keeping them between me and her, and then hooking her hip with my right leg and having my leg like across her torso kind of. But she was up on her side, and getting her flattened out was proving to be a little bit of a challenge. But I think if I were to do what I'm talking about now, where I was able to get one leg over but not the other, I was having a lot of trouble getting it, completed and whatnot. And so, like I said, I think if I hook that hip, the outside of the hip with my right foot, I could keep her pinned that way, and kind of either push from the other side, step out to the other side, and push it, and then like turn it around to like a neon belly or something like that. I don't know. It's something that I'm gonna have to work on, obviously. Anywho, let's go ahead and throw down with some music, and I was planning on playing Talk Shit Get Shot, but I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit of need for some bloodlust. And so here it is. Body Count, Bloodlust, First Dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Killing Joke with Total Invasion. Speaking of invasions, got this article here on Bitcoin.com. This is by Wendy McElroy. So no penis. And this is authored 2 days ago. Crypto needs less government regulation, not more. I'll get down to it here. The case against greater crypto regulation. The arguments and the assumption in Lynn's article are the opposite of what is true. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't actually read the preface of this, but because it's in bold, and typically those are just like summaries of the whole article, and so I don't really see a point of reading the summary and then reading the article. Anyway, continuing. A recent opinion article by Peter Lynn, quote, "Why regulation is the best thing for crypto," presents common arguments on why the state and state-affiliated institutions should administer cryptocurrency. Underlying the arguments is an assumption. Free market cannot provide necessary standards for crypto, and the state must step into the void. The case against greater crypto regulation. The arguments and the assumption in Lynn's article are the opposite of what is true. The assumption is the more important aspect of Lynn's article. However, because the arguments rest so heavily upon it that they are almost offered as self-evident assertions. If you buy the presumption, you've bought the conclusions. Lynn opens with a nod to the, quote, disconcerting image of what regulation might entail, such as being tracked down by the Internal Revenue Service or being imprisoned for using crypto in India. Another nod goes to advocates who believe the financial system is, quote, part of crypto's DNA, a freedom for which Bitcoin was created. Yeah. These acknowledgments are cursory and dismissive, however. Lynn moves on quickly, quote, if crypto is the future and there are valid concerns, then, quote, we need to engage in the debate and embrace reasonable and responsible regulation. The conclusion of this debate between financial freedom and state control is apparently foregone, namely, that, quote, reasonable and responsible regulation is required. This means the debate will be limited to what type of regulation should be imposed. Given that Lynn is the founder and CEO of a digital asset exchange that is part of London Stock Exchange Group, his default position of, quote, there ought to be a law is understandable. Yeah, it's because he's got government's hand up his ass, and so he wants to put it up everybody else's ass, too. Sorry, asshole! That's what happens when you assume the fucking responsibility of running a goddamn exchange. Anyway, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you with crypto. Lin simply assumes that only the state can resolve, quote, valid concerns regarding the future of crypto. He offers a common explanation as to, quote, why. Because even the most devout supporters could agree that growth of this industry depends, in part, on establishment of safe, fair, and reliable market conditions. Many, if not most, devout supporters do not agree. Moreover, his statement contains an odd leap of logic. It equates to, quote, market conditions with the condition of being regulated by a central authority, when they are actually antagonistic states. Market conditions, good or bad, are not established by authority. They are a natural result of the cumulative choices and exchanges of individuals. Lin continues, quote, presently the regulatory climate is still uncertain and fragmented across jurisdictions. He seems to believe this is a problem. To quote devout supporters who think there should be no regulation, however, this presents no difficulty. The market is always, quote, uncertain, in the sense that individual preferences are unpredictable and market circumstances change. Nor does things being, quote, fragmented across jurisdictions pose a problem for the free market. Indeed, the word fragmented can be replaced by the words diverse and decentralized. Only if crypto serves jurisdictions, that is, centralized authorities, is homogeneity desirable. If crypto serves individuals, then diversity should reign. Would you trust the IMF? Fuck no! The conclusion towards which Lin has been driving now arrives. Quote, the contours of a global regulatory framework are coming into focus, and we should welcome it. The contours prominently include the International Monetary Fund, which has established what Lin calls, quote, compelling document. It cites the alleged liquidity risk, default risk, market risk, and foreign exchange risk posed by private coins. To pause for a second, the IMF is the type of trusted third-party problem against which Satoshi Nakamoto and the cypherpunks rebelled. The central banking system writ large. Central banking, not private money, is the overwhelming risk to liquidity, default, and foreign exchange, not to mention inflation, fiat, bailouts, negative interest rates, and many other money monopoly travesties. Yet private money is the risk that Lin perceives because, quote, digital assets and cryptocurrencies could be attractive and see capital inflows away from fiat currencies in countries with high inflation rates and weak institutions. Yeah, in other words, you're supposed to suffer that shit. Fuck you. And collapsing banks, rather than have their financial choices dictated by the same elite authorities that caused the high inflation and collapsing banks. Furthermore, Lin notes how difficult it is for virtual asset service providers. And just to let you know, that's a bullshit term. There is no such thing as a virtual asset service provider. Continuing on, such as crypto exchanges, like his own, to comply with the... let's start over. Furthermore, Lin notes how difficult it is for virtual asset service providers such as crypto exchanges like his own to comply with anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism regulations. The true solution is to remove those regulations and allow individuals to be financially independent. Goddamn Skippy. If I want to fund terrorism, that's my business. Financial independence and personal freedom are not the purpose of Lin's article, however. His intent is to champion the extreme centralization of crypto into the hands of the same trusted third parties that have ravaged the wealth of society over and over again. This intent is clear from the, quote, reasonable and responsible regulations that he presents from the IMF. Two examples, quote, central banks could grant licenses on the condition of supervision and hold VASPs accountable for customer screening, transaction monitoring, and reporting suspicious activity in accordance with the Know Your Customer KYC, AML, and CFT regulations. And, quote, we can see the first attempts at such cooperation being made with the financial task forces, the FATF's, recently introduced travel rule, which requires VASPs to collect and transfer customer information when processing transactions. As it rolls on, the article sounds like a paean to the destruction of every advantage crypto offers to individuals. Its arguments and conclusions are all based on the assumption that the free market is incapable of evolving standards and techniques to combat the problems that exist, problems that are minor compared to the disastrous solution suggested. Questioning the assumption, my book, the Satoshi Revolution, gives economic, social, and moral answers as to why an unfettered free market is infinitely better at serving individuals than the state. But for many people, nothing is as effective as real-life examples. Of the hundreds that are possible, consider only two, which act to create a proof of principle. Few historians have examined the origins of free market standards as closely as the voluntarist scholar Karl Wagner. In his essay, Weights and Measures, State or Market, he contrasts the evolution of private weights and measures as opposed to state-regulated ones. One example, the barrel measure of 42 gallons of petroleum, which is used as a standard by most OPEC nations today, Wagner explains. In the early 1860s, a barrel of oil usually meant a cask of oil, regardless of its size, for there were no standard size casks in use. Variations in the oilman's barrel persisted until at least 1872, when the producer's agreement resulted in a fixed price for a 42-gallon barrel of oil. He notes that oil may not now be shipped in 42-gallon barrels because it started moving by pipeline, oil tankers, and tank trucks. What is important to us, Wagner observes, is that the custom still persists of buying and selling oil by the barrel. The oil pioneers did not, indeed they could not, wait for the government to proclaim a unit by which they should measure and sell the oil they discovered. Rather, they adopted measurements from other liquids. The whiskey barrel of western Pennsylvania, where oil was first commercially exploited, was a 42-gallon container. Eventually, there arose from the competition of various interests, the producers, transporters, and consumers of oil, the industry standard of a 42-gallon barrel. It did not originate in the halls of any legislature and needed no governmental sanction. It persists intact to this very day. Wagner continues, the history of the oilman's barrel is just one incident in the standardization of weights and measures in modern industrial America. There are many others. For example, the development of the electricity industry explains why product integration and standardization were needed. It also exemplifies the manner in which the free market operates. Light bulbs must screw into household sockets. Electrical appliances must be supplied with the proper voltage. The United States electrical industry agreed on standards because it made economic sense, not because they were imposed by Congress. Contrast the preceding free market evolution with state-related weights and measures. Quote, since the mining and the use of gold and silver were a jealously guarded pejorative of royalty in the ancient world, the provision of coins became a government monopoly. To maintain a monopoly, government needed to intervene with the definition, promulgation, and standards for weights and measures. Quote, government had to provide the prohibition of new standards which might compete with its existing standards. This dynamic is well exemplified by the ordinances found in medieval Germany. The accuracy of early German coinage left much to be desired. Many were underweight, others overweight. In an effort to prevent people from discovering and melting down the overweight coins, the government outlawed the private ownership of scales. There were numerous other ways in which governments tampered with weights and measures. In the history of nearly every national unit of account, there can be found the story of chronic debasement, either in the form of reducing the weight of or the purity of the metal in a given coin without reducing its legal value. For a more extensive discussion of how the free market solved the problems of private money and how government impeded solutions, see How and Why Government Outlawed Private Money Part 1 and 2. Free market versus the state. Watner uses two other examples to contrast the effectiveness of the free market's development of standards with that of the state. Quote, chaos in the air, voluntarism or statism in the early radio industry, and voluntarism and the evolution of industrial standards. Another set of essays in the periodical The Voluntarist highlights a marked advantage of free market solutions over the statist ones. Watner's essay, Free Banking and Fractional Reserves, is a sharp counterpoint to that of economic professor Larry White. Quote, Free Banking and Fractional Reserves, a reply. The debate hinges on whether fractional reserve would evolve in a free market banking system. The marked advantage is this. Both could exist in competition, allowing customers to decide which best suited their needs. Lynn would almost certainly refer to such an arrangement as, quote, uncertain and fragmented across jurisdictions, and would almost certainly call for legislation to create certainty and homogeneity. Watner and White would not, and customers would have choice. Debate on crypto freedom versus state control is needed and inevitable, but let it be an honest debate, not one that proceeds from a blatantly false assumption into arguments that are assertions, not one with sleights of hand that equate good market conditions with state regulation or leaps of logic. Let the debate at least mention that state control is an involuntary transfer of financial power from individuals to elite trusted third parties, but ultimately there can be no honest debate over how much control to assert over peaceful people and their wealth. There can be no ethical debate about how best or how much to steal. I completely agree. Let me see if there's any responses to this. Supposedly there is one. Show one comment. And Robert Lefebvre says, an excellent article, as Wendy usually gives us. Here's another overlooked example of government messing with standards, and it has been with us since the founding of the country. The official monetary standard of the U.S. is the dollar, which is 1 ounce silver coin, or which is a 1 ounce silver coin. It has been the standard since before the country was formed. The word was found twice in the U.S. Constitution, which formed the government. The Founding Fathers made the mistake of dictating what the non-standard coins were worth in relation to the silver coin, the copper coin, the nickel coin, or the gold coin. The current gold to silver ratio has been determined by the free market as almost 80-1, but they minted coins that said a gold coin was worth 35 of the silver coins. At the same time they issued copper pennies they established at a 100-1 ratio. The Founding Fathers engaged in government price fixing of the value of the coins. Who is to say 100 copper coins equals 1 silver coin, or 1 gold coin equals 35 silver ones? The reason they needed coins in more than one metal was simple. They needed to, quote, make change. Gold coins generally can't be made small enough to buy bubblegum, a loaf of bread, nor a pop, and usually the same is true for silver coins. Cryptocurrencies, on the other hand, avoid the problem of making change because they are divisible to 8 decimal places, and the change is always returned in the same form it was sent. Oh, not always. I think that's that's one of the assumptions that certain parties in crypto would like to challenge. I think the brief but very loud campaign to try and get rid of the term Satoshi, that it kind of included that, that there was an effort, I believe at least, to change the way that we count Bitcoin in order for additional frauds to take place. Fortunately, they did not take hold. But yeah, as far as the necessity for government regulation, let me put it to you this way. Bitcoin existed entirely without any such regulation or any such acknowledgement until at least 2014. That's 6 years that the whole thing ran completely unacknowledged and as rampant as it was. Were there scams? Yes. Were there failures? Yes. Were there hackings? Yes. But you know what else there was? A functional market. A functional global market. And since then, the thing, I predicted this a long time ago, that ultimately, with regard to cryptocurrencies, you are literally incentivized not to follow any regulations. Because the regulations themselves, in order to fulfill on the mandates of them, or to perform the actions that are required in order to enforce them, cost fucking money. It represents nothing but a net loss. I mean, you can monetize some of the information and whatever, but then you have to recover the cost of the storage of it. And then you have to be accountable for who you sold the fucking information to. If you sold it to some fucking hacker, you just fucked over all your customers. And at some point in the future, that may turn into a significant liability that will end up with your ass in court. You're taking responsibility for not only people's money, but also their personal information by just being an exchange. And that's why Satoshi Nakamoto basically made Bitcoin to where we do not require any third parties to do anything for us. If you determine that you want to buy some Litecoin from somebody and they are willing to exchange it for Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever, you too are able to determine your own price, your own exchange rate by which you're willing to go. But you do want to make sure, of course, that it's agreed upon, because if you end up shorting your customer, you're now liable again. We do have words for criminal activities, things like fraud, theft. These exist already. We have plenty of laws against them. So the idea that we need to introduce more laws into this equation is bullshit. Now, of course, there's a trade-off, though. If we do not expect any kind of regulation, we have to be willing to accept the consequences. Meaning, if somebody does conduct a fraudulent activity and we are a victim of it, we have nobody to fucking blame but ourselves, and we have nobody else accountable to assisting us in giving our money or getting our money back. Now, let us add something else in there, though. We are also free to do business with whom we decide to do business with. So, in the event that your trusted third party abuses their position and robs you or allows your money to be hacked or something like that, you are under no obligation to continue to trade or transact with that third party. Now, the same cannot be said for banks. And of course, they do have FDIC coverage and whatnot, but there are certain conditions where that you'll be robbed by the bank, literally, where they'll like reorganize your transactions to where it was conceivable that you were going to fall into arrears if the transactions were ordered in such a way that all of your withdrawals came out first and then your deposits went in last. They would immediately draw you into arrears, charge you all kinds of transaction fees for all of the transactions you made while you were in the hole to them. And then when your check came in, you were 10 days behind where this was going on, and you were getting nicked for $25 to $40 every single time, and then cumulatively every single day that you didn't pay it, you got tagged for another $8 fee until you went back to your bank account and you were $3,000 in the hole, and you only have $1,800 to cover for it. Now, of course, if the bank simply accepted your deposits and processed your deposits and your withdrawals in the order they'd actually received them in, as opposed to on like a 24-hour or even a week-long basis where they may actually do, you would never fall into arrears with them because you're actually planning, not according to their schedule, but your schedule or the real schedule, of receiving the funds or depositing the funds or paying the funds out. Because it's under your exclusive control, you won't fall into arrears. And so, again, the idea that we need entities to be managing this shit, and that we need entities to be telling us what qualifies as a cryptocurrency and how it can be used and where it can be exchanged and what we can buy. Fuck you! We're not going to listen to you. We don't even listen to you when it comes to taxation. It's what you got to understand is they're going for, they put out a taster, and then they try and pursue it just a little bit, not too much effort. They don't want to put in more than they're actually getting back. But if they're not receiving any kind of compliance, the chances that they'll simply give up on it goes way up. And I honestly believe that the vast majority of people that are participating in cryptocurrencies are not paying taxes on them. Not to anybody. And, of course, there are some exchanges that won't give you any choice in the matter, but that's, you decide whether or not you want to deal with them. That's one of the great things about cryptocurrencies is that there are means to use them without any kind of KYC AML bullshit. Simply because the wallets that we use and whatnot don't require that. And won't require it. But yeah, I think that, Peter Lin's why regulation is the best thing for crypto. Let's click on that thing. Let's see what it has to say. And yeah, it's a short enough article, I think. This is authored on August 28th, 2019, and it's by Peter Lin. Why regulation is the best thing for crypto. When we hear about holders of crypto being, quote, tracked down by the Internal Revenue Service, or that imprisonment is being considered for anyone using crypto in India, it conjures up a disconcerting image of what regulation might entail. You mean a reality of what it entails, asshole. It's part of crypto's DNA to be unregulated, some might say. Actually, it is. It falls outside of the scope of government and should remain so for all the reasons it was created in the first place. Goddamn Skippy. But if crypto is the future, and there are valid concerns, then surely these should be addressed. If we want crypto to be accepted and become part of our everyday lives, then we need to engage in the debate and embrace reasonable and responsible regulation. No, we don't. Even the most devout supporters who wish nothing more than to see crypto succeed on a mass scale could agree that the growth of this industry depends, in part, on the establishment of safe, fair, and reliable market conditions. No, it doesn't. Presently, the regulatory climate is still uncertain and fragmented across jurisdictions. Good. However, recent developments seem to suggest that we find ourselves at a turning point. The contours of a global regulatory framework are coming into focus, and we should welcome it. No, we shouldn't. An emerging framework. Global. On July 15th, the International Monetary Fund published a compelling document containing a useful topology of digital money, an assessment of the risks it poses, and policy recommendations. It posits that privately issued stablecoins pose a number of risks to consumers and financial stability, citing liquidity risk, default risk, market risk, and foreign exchange risk as comprising the primary concerns. Hold on right there. Let us step back just a moment. It posits that privately issued stablecoins pose a number of risks to consumers and financial stability. Okay. For the most part, you and I are never going to be trading in privately issued quote-unquote stablecoins. Mostly because the stablecoins that are issued would be issued by a centralized entity privately to us. Okay? And stablecoins are coins that are backed by fiat currencies or supposedly backed by some basket of other shit, right? Well, if they are, they're basically a security against the basket of shit or the bank balance that is supposedly that the stablecoin supposedly represents a chunk of. So you've already got a fiducie in there, who is issuing the stablecoins or regulating the basket that it's contingent on, or rather counting as its collateral. But yeah, by that alone, we're talking about a security. I mean, if we want to be honest, we're talking about a security, and you would fall afoul of the SEC and other regulating entities. But again, these are all issues that fiducies have to deal with. Enough fiducies have been douchebags that we actually require some sort of legislation because they are acting as trusted entities, a trusted third party. So yes, they should be regulated. Continue. It argues that digital assets and cryptocurrencies could be attractive and see capital inflows away from fiat currencies in countries with high inflation rates and weak institutions. That's a good thing. It furthermore notes that it is hard for virtual asset service providers, VASPs. What the fuck is a VASP? Such as a crypto exchange, to comply with anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism CFT regulations when assets are underpinned by decentralized technology and stakeholders are spread across jurisdictions. Yeah, so what? Fuck you. A global cryptocurrency, because it is capable of being global, will in fact be global in that people within various jurisdictions will be participating in the same currency, which puts them outside of governmental control. Continuing. Let's see. But it also provides some solutions. Central banks could play a role in providing issuers of stablecoins with access to central reserves. To prevent monopolies from forming and to protect monetary policy, they could consider issuing their own digital currency, such as what is currently being considered in China. However, to drive innovation in the private sector, the IMF document favors private-public partnerships instead. Yeah, that's the thing. We're talking about driving innovation, but creating a homogenized market. Those two concepts are not compatible. I don't give a fuck who you are. They are not compatible. In order for innovation to happen, we must not be constrained by the certainties of a homogenized market. Continuing on. Central banks could grant licenses on the condition of supervision and hold VASPs accountable for customer screening, transaction monitoring, and reporting suspicious activity in accordance with Know Your Customer, KYC, AML, and CFT regulations. Industry standards could also be defined for the security of wallets and client data. Yeah, we already have those quote-unquote standards, and they're purposely, onerously expensive, both to comply with the regulations by being licensed and the storage space for fucking all that data. And I should also add right there that there is no real punishments that are set out for abusing or failing to provide secure storage for that data. So you got companies like Capital One third-partying the storage of their customers' data to AWS. And that's wonderful for AWS, but it doesn't provide you with any kind of real security. And as a matter of fact, a former AWS employee just hacked like 100 million fucking customers I think it was 100 million of Capital One, supposedly, as well as done a whole bunch of other stuff that makes me believe that she's taken the fall for more than one entity. Continuing. Let's see. And client data. The paper from the IMF does stress, however, that any regulation should be applied in proportion to the risks and types of services offered, and that the international cooperation is crucial to prevent regulatory arbitrage. Too fucking bad. That's not going to happen either. Municipalities and districts use regulatory arbitrage to compete for whether or not customers want to come and do business in their jurisdiction. The idea of making it homogenized is completely antithetical to that. Continuing. We can see the first attempts at such cooperation being made with the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, recently introduced travel rule, which requires VASPs to collect and transfer customer information when processing transactions. Although the FATF's guidance is not legally binding, the G20 has declared it will follow the FATF's guidance. No, they won't. Domestic, the United Kingdom. But it's not just at the global level that we're seeing the crystallization of a regulatory framework. For example, in July, the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, published two important documents. The first was its guidance on crypto assets, which after extensive industry consultation makes a clear assessment and distinction between exchange tokens, utility tokens, and security tokens, none of which the average person even fucks with, while recognizing that some assets may fall within multiple categories. The second document, published by the FCA, proposes rules to ban the sale of crypto derivatives to retail investors on account of them being less equipped in their ability to assess the risks of these types of complex, often volatile financial products. Dude, why the fuck do you think people are invested in cryptocurrencies to begin with? They are volatile financial products. Duh. In studying the FCA's guidance, a number of remarks are worth making. First, the UK's overall approach is not all that different from other jurisdictions such as, say, Singapore, Hong Kong, or even the United States, where special attention is given to crypto assets that have characteristics of securities, i.e. tokens that constitute equity, debt, or part of a collective investment scheme. Secondly, the documents provide fairly clear guidance with regard to the regulatory status of crypto assets. They aim to strike a balance between leaving the field open for financial innovation while ensuring retail investor protection. No, they don't. They only account for trying to maintain current interested parties. Continuing. Thirdly, the FCA's guidance comes at an interesting time. According to the financial advisory firm De Beer Group, the UK finds itself in a unique position as it nears the exit from the European Union. This could present itself as an opportunity to chart a new course to potentially turn the UK into a crypto-friendly hub in similar fashion to Switzerland and Japan. No, like Portugal. So what's driving these processes, and why should an industry that has so far enjoyed nearly unbridled freedom be positive about new regulatory restrictions? It shouldn't. External and internal push factors. Libra cannot be ignored here. When a giant tech company with a $2.4 billion strong user base and supported by the likes of MasterCard, Visa, and PayPal seeks to enter the space, it is significant. Looking past sensationalist coverage, highlighting how Facebook was grilled in U.S. Congress over its proposal, we're actually seeing the stirrings of a healthy debate. If anything, Libra has served to elevate the discourse about what governments ought to do about this phenomenon called cryptocurrency, which according to Bitwise has moved crypto at least 3 years ahead. No, it hasn't. I don't give a fuck what Bitwise says. Facebook's Libra project has generated renewed interest in digital currencies and blockchain, quote, and with the appropriate balance of regulation, digital currencies and their innovative underlying technology could provide meaningful benefits, U.S. Republican Senator Mike Crapo said at a hearing on digital currencies and blockchain on July 30th, 2019. Yeah, whatever. You're a bunch of fucking people lying. Similarly, increased involvement in the industry from traditional market participants in finance like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and Fidelity Digital Asset Services can only add further impetus to this debate. No. They chose to get in on their own. We don't need any additional debate there. Continuing. Especially considering the recent findings of a Fidelity investment survey which revealed that unclear regulation is among the major obstacles deterring institutional investors from adding crypto to their portfolio. Too fucking bad. That's part of the game here, kids. But apart from these external push factors, a similar drive can be observed from within the industry itself. Yeah, by fucking legacy people. It is marked by the rise of a new generation of cryptocurrency and digital asset exchanges built in collaboration with traditional exchange operators. Talking about backed. There's only one. It's backed. Well, I shouldn't say there's only one. There's a couple others, but I expect that they'll see relatively similar results with regard to success. Continuing. Backed, for example, which is a Bitcoin futures trading platform, was created by the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. ErisX counts NASDAQ as one of its investors. Likewise, at our own exchange, AAX, our matching engine is powered by LSEG technology, which is part of the London Stock Exchange Group. What these exchanges have in common is a shared recognition that institutional-grade technology and a provocative approach toward regulatory compliance are vital to creating the conditions fit to accommodate institutional investors and bring serious capital into the market, i.e. they need a gamed fucking rigged fucking market in order to be considering this as something that they want to participate in. Regulation is not the process by which users are deprived of the liberties and benefits essential to cryptocurrency. Rather, it is a necessary condition by which they can be made available to everyone. No, bullshit. Let's see what the comments are for this one. Mitsui says regulation is necessary, or indeed is necessary, seeing the money laundering and counterfeiting currencies. Without it, money would flow everywhere wildly. Yeah, you're full of shit, Mitsui. Benjamin Franklin says, why are you even in this space? This is free market money, designed to be used by an end user without a middleman, designed very obviously to be anti-government. You're a complete second-hander. Why wouldn't you learn the philosophy behind the product that now puts money in your pocket? How arrogant. Damn right. Hamish McEwen says, regulation is not the regulation is not the process by which users are deprived of the liberties and benefits essential to cryptocurrency. Rather, it is a necessary condition by which they can be made available to everyone. This is what Hamish has to say. If that's the conclusion, you can't be taken seriously. Please provide the regulation that mandates inclusion. Tough, eh? Because regulation is absolutely about stopping anything being available to everyone. Goddamn right. So yeah, this asshole says a bunch of shit that's a bunch of bullshit probably because this exchange isn't doing worth a shit. I mean, you know, let's see if he gives me where his fucking thing is. Where is it? G20, publish important documents. You know, this guy's running an exchange that is, not only is it responsible as a fiducie, but it's made itself responsible on an industrial level by incorporating itself with the London Stock Exchange. So this guy is whining about regulation that he's having to endure because of the choices that he's made, and wants everybody else to be subject to the same thing. Well, fuck you, Peter Lynn. We didn't get into this shit to be compliant with you. You chose the decisions that you made. And that is yours to do in a free market. But the rest of us are not responsible for suffering the same fucking shit that you are, that you chose to suffer. And this is a lesson that people are going to learn through cryptocurrencies one way or another. See, personally, I believe that no matter what the Fat F says, or the UK's government, or anybody else has to say, if you write a cryptocurrency and you distribute it to others and you get significant enough in size that your inclusion on exchanges is actually being asked for, there isn't anything that any of these regulatory entities can do to change it. And I believe that due to the creation of Bitcoin, that is going to be the new standard. That regardless of what they say, you are free to start up economies of your own with currency bases that you and several other people decide to get into the creation and management of. But the whole requirement for some sort of external regulatory apparatus, it simply isn't there. You know, you make the decisions yourself. When you come into cryptocurrencies and you decide, you know what, I want to buy Ripple. I want to exchange my US dollars for Ripple. That is your choice. And so if Ripple goes down, you suffer. If Ripple goes up, you benefit. But you are the one that makes that decision. And taking that choice away from you is all regulation is really about. Is a law saying you can't deal with a non-licensed entity with your cryptocurrency. And if you do, we're going to bust them and we're going to bust you. Well, you know what? That's just not going to fly. The vast majority of the transactions that are happening on any cryptocurrency network have some sort of obfuscation of who is involved in it. And I mean, we still, to this day, see multiple transactions on the Bitcoin network for millions of dollars from unidentified wallet to unidentified wallet. And that is with intent. There's no taxation, there's no regulation going on there. You know, if there's an entity that's within the UK or Eurozone and they have their VAT tax, that tax is not being collected on that transaction. I can assure you. And you know what I have to say to the taxation authorities that whinge about that? Too fucking bad. You provide a market condition, and if your market condition is against the interests of the individuals involved in it, and they have an opportunity to go to another option, that is what they are going to do. It doesn't matter if it deprives you of a cushy job, they are going to do it. Because suffering your regulation and suffering the conditions that your regulation provides is no longer a requirement for us. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And where to go with that? Here we go. And this is one thing that people like Peter Lynn just do not want to admit about cryptocurrencies, is that because the money is in your hands, nobody can issue any kind of loans against it. Nobody can create loans against it and do things like fund wars with it. And so here it is, KMFDM, a drug against war, here on Coin Metal. And that was Overkill with Welcome to the Garden State. And it is with that, I got this next one up here. It's on smh.com.au. There will be no Twitcoin. Twitter founder says he won't release his own currency. This is by Dominic Powell, authored September 5th, 2019 at 12:01 a.m. Apparently Dominic is a time traveler. But yes, penis. Twitter founder Jack Dorsey has declared he has no interest in creating a digital currency similar to Facebook's Libra, instead promoting the use of traditional cryptocurrency Bitcoin. Facebook unveiled its plan to create a, quote, new global currency called Libra in June, targeting a launch in the first half of next year. Mr. Dorsey, who has long been a vocal Bitcoin supporter, told The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald he believed the cryptocurrency pioneer was still the, quote, best bet to be the internet's native currency. Not likely. Quote, I think open internet standards serve every person better than the ones controlled or started by companies, said Mr. Dorsey, who is in Australia to promote his digital payments company, Square. He also said he had not entertained the idea of creating a Libra-esque currency for Twitter or Square, saying instead he'd rather use, quote, existing open standards such as Bitcoin. Smart move. Square sells Bitcoin through its Cash App and in the second quarter made $125 million in revenue from Bitcoin trading by its customers. They created $2 million in profit. Quote, I think Bitcoin's the best bet because it's been the most resilient. It's around for 10 years. It has been a great brand and it has been tested a bunch, he said. Quote, as I look at all cryptocurrencies that could fill that role of being the native currency for the internet, Bitcoin is a pretty high probability. Yeah, but not very likely. The multi-billionaire tech entrepreneur was in Melbourne for the launch of Square Terminal, a new payments device aimed at moving small businesses from using hardware provided by the banks. Banks control authority and practices are a global phenomenon, but I think it's really acute here in Australia, Square's head of hardware, Jesse Dorgusker, said. Australia's uptake of cashless payments also factored into the company's decision to roll out new tech locally, with Mr. Dorsey saying Australia fared, quote, much better than the U.S. when it came to digital payments. With markets last month spooked by recessionary signals, Mr. Dorsey said he was confident of his business's ability to weather a downturn, saying they were, quote, prepared for anything. Quote, we're always heading into a recession, and we're always heading out of one, and anyone who offers an opinion on this is fooling themselves, he said. There is no one person on this planet that understands the global economy. Well, that's true. Mr. Dorsey said Square's positioning in the software and payment space meant it could, quote, weather storms, including recessions and U.S.-China trade wars, though he noted other companies may not be so lucky. Quote, a lot of other businesses may be affected, but ours... Let's see. Hold on a moment. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with my broadcasting program, but we'll resolve that right now. Just go ahead and bump that off there and then bring it on back in. And switch to that. And bam! Resolved. This is the modern era. We can do that kind of thing. Continuing. A lot of other business models may be affected, but ours is pretty robust because people always need to eat. That will always be something that's valuable, he said. Climate change is an existential challenge. Mike Cannon-Brookes, founder of Australian tech success story Atlassian, yesterday encouraged its staff to attend a global strike for climate action this month, with Mr. Cannon-Brookes encouraging companies to take responsibility for climate change. That's kind of difficult, I think. Mr. Dorsey said he would similarly encourage his staff to take action on, quote, anything they care about, with climate change a top priority for him. Climate change is one of those existential challenges facing all of us. We should have more conversations with global community around it. I agree. I don't think any one particular country is going to make an impact. It has to be all of us. Late last week, Mr. Dorsey's Twitter account was hacked, with a number of racial slurs and swear words sent to his 4 million followers before the company regained control. However, Mr. Dorsey refused to answer questions about Twitter's issues, saying he would only discuss Square. Well, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, as far as staying away from trying to do a Facebook thing, very, very smart. However, I think that Mr. Dorsey's opinion is going to get challenged significantly with regard to Bitcoin. And that's because I don't really expect off-chain payments to take the kind of jump that he kind of envisions with regard to Lightning Network and, of course, his own company, Square. You know, they might be willing to do off-chain transactions, but the broader community really isn't. And from what I understand, the last count that I checked, it was a little bit over 800 Bitcoin that are total tied up in Lightning Network. And that's including really big hubs that are holding the vast majority of the Bitcoin that are on the Lightning Network. And so, you know, when you look at it from that perspective, the likelihood that Bitcoin will be the quote native currency of the internet is I believe incorrect, because the only way it could be such in its current state is for it to be facilitated, for the use of it to be facilitated by a trusted third party. And again, this takes away all of the things that makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. It takes away the permissionlessness of it. It takes away the anonymity of it, or the pseudo-anonymity, pseudonymy. I think that's pseudonymy. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, the ability to conceal your identity in association with your financial activity. but yeah, you give all of that up when you're operating with a trusted third party. And regardless of what their current policies are, you have to understand they are a trusted third party, and as such, they can change their policies in the future and even apply them retroactively. They have your money, not your keys, not your coins. You'll notice that the vast majority of people that are talking about Lightning Network and Segwit, they don't talk about that. They don't mention that, not your keys, not your coins. But that's the reality. And so again, I believe that one of the issues that Square is going to be facing is ever increasing fees. And what these entities also leave out is the fact that they have to impose KYC AML bullshit. And some entities aren't doing that. Like Blue Wallet, I think they're just avoiding doing any open business with people in the United States. Meaning if you want to use their services, you'd have to do so through a VPN and obfuscate your locality. That again imposes another cost on things that are relatively free. Cryptocurrencies on their own are relatively free to transact. But again, when you start adding things like Square or an exchange or some other entity like that, you're under their control. You're giving your money to them. And so, they may at some time decide that they're going to observe all of the blacklists that the IRS and other entities create of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency addresses. And they may say, no, you can't do business with that person because they handle tainted coins. They readily accept coins that were acquired via theft or whatever, and so they're not filing any suspicious action reports or anything like that on their customers, and so you can't do business with them. That is the danger of having trusted third parties. Again, you lose all of the things that make Bitcoin Bitcoin, or separate from Visa, or delineating it from Visa, by giving into having to use a third party. And I've discussed this multiple times on this show that, people talk about Bitcoin being worth $100,000 or even $1 million a piece. What they don't talk about is how much transaction fees will be for $1 million Bitcoin. If we're still restricted to 1 megabyte block sizes, and I've seen people claim that up to 2 megabytes have been moved, but I had somebody put that block up to me, to talk shit to me about, we can do over 1 megabyte of blocks, or 1 megabyte blocks. And I looked at it really closely, and I noticed that there were only 230 transactions in the block. What's the likelihood that RBF forced plenty of smaller transactions that would have fit into that block out of it? Probably a lot. And so again, this is the kind of thing that will drive people away from Bitcoin. When we kind of get savvy to the fact that they're just putting through exchange transactions and transactions for third-party payment service providers, and they're using RBF to bump our transactions out to fit those transactions in. We're going to be saying, well, gosh, I want a cryptocurrency that has a better monetary policy, because I don't want one that by default will put a bank or other trusted third party ahead of me in line, because then it puts me in the same position I was in previously, where due to the financial and time costs imposed by having to wait around for all the other bank transactions and all the third-party transactions to get put through, because I'm waiting in line for all that, I'm losing time. I'm losing money. That money could be used elsewhere, probably faster. And so again, people are going to be evaluating that reality and saying to themselves, well, fuck, I lose everything if I use Bitcoin as my cryptocurrency, so I'm going to use Litecoin, or I'm going to use Dogecoin, or I'm going to use Monero, or Verge, or any one of a number of other cryptocurrencies that do not have this restriction, that do not have these same monetary policies. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, being the first mover doesn't provide you with any additional security in the market if all you're doing is standing still, which is what Bitcoin has done pretty much since about, I would say, 2015. That's when Andreas Antonopoulos blocked me for disagreeing on the fact that we need to impose SegWit now. Well, you know, here we are. We're barely even scratching 50% adoption after 4 years. And the vast majority of the people that are adopting are big institutions. Not even really rich individuals. Big institutions. And if you want to know why I think that's a really stupid fucking idea, go to my YouTube channel and check out Bro, Are These Your Private Keys? Because I would go through and explain all of it now, but that would spoil it for you, so, you know, I don't want to do that. Anyway, I got a few others here. I got this one, your Twitter, covered that. We didn't get into the IMF's bullshit, and we may not, in fact, get into it, because, yeah, I don't like them. And we got that one done. And maybe we'll go with that one. This is fucking comedy gold. Okay. Now you already know I don't like Tether because I think they're just counterfeit US dollars. And the other currencies that they're participating with. Anyway, and so here's this article. It's on ambcrypto.com by Mark Prestwood, and this is published approximately 19 hours ago on September 4th, 2019. Tether considering plan to issue stablecoins pegged to a basket of commodities. Where else have we heard this idea? Yeah, I just want you to think for a moment. Where else have we heard this idea? Oh yeah, Venezuela's Petro. And it sounds an awful lot like Facebook's Libra. Anyway, continuing on. Tether has been in the news over the past few months for all the wrong reasons, because it sucks. Not only was the cryptocurrency exchange Bitfinex charged with using Tether reserves to cover up extensive losses, but many have speculated that Tether is being printed radically to manipulate the price of Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency. One of those people would be me. It's in the news again after Bitfinex shareholder Zhao Dong said during an interview that Tether Ltd planned to issue 2 new stablecoins, one of which will be pegged to the Chinese renminbi, while the other to commodities such as gold, crude oil, and rubber. Because it's gonna bounce. News of the former had previously been revealed by Dong in a similar fashion. As previously noted, iFinex, the parent company of Tether Ltd. And Bitfinex, are currently being investigated by the New York Attorney General for allegedly covering up losses worth $850 million. After Panamanian payment processor Crypto Capital's funds were seized by American, Polish, and Portuguese authorities following iFinex handing them $850 million to process fiat currency withdrawals, the company plans to release these stablecoins through Tether due to the risks associated with placing large amounts of money with a single entity, according to Zhao. Dubbed CNHT, the Chinese renminbi-backed stablecoins reserve will be held in a Belgian bank and could be launched within the next few weeks. Xiaodong went on to say that the yuan-pegged stablecoin will not be interfering with Chinese capital controls. He said, CNHT will not interfere with PBOC capital control policy because CNH is different than CNY. It's already an offshore product. On the contrary, CNHT will help China expand the adoption of CNH for international settlements. Yeah, right, it'll just counterfeit renminbis. Though court documents show that only 74% of Tether USDT was backed by the US dollar, Zhao maintains that all the USDT is fully backed by reserves, with 3.35 billion of the existing 4 billion USDT now in securities, while 650 million is being lent to Bitfinex. Zhao went on to add that even if the $650 million weren't counted, it would bring Tether's USD backing to 83.75%, not 74%, a percentage that he attributed to fake news. According to Zhao, Tether will soon be paid back due to the $1 billion Bitfinex raised through the sale of its LEO tokens. Oh, jeez. So they're preparing to launch their own version of the Petro, basically. And to my knowledge, the Petro doesn't even exist. It may exist. It may be in circulation in Venezuela among a few people, but I hear too little of it for it to be accepted as a global currency. And this whole thing about Zhao saying that he's backed 83.75%, counting the $650 million that Bitfinex is in the hole to them for. I think it's really funny. There was a time when Tether claimed that USDT was backed 100% on a one-to-one basis by US dollars. It has since stopped making that claim. The fact that they've slipped 16%, I think that says a lot. I think there's a pretty good chance that they don't even have 74% covered by actual US dollars. I think they have US dollar equivalents in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, but that can change on a moment's notice, and that can tank the value of their USDT's holdings. This is why I don't believe in any kind of derivative assets and whatnot being pegged to cryptocurrencies. Because once you put the money into them, so you give them some of your Bitcoin, you're now subject to not only their will, but also their ability to maintain a legitimate balance, or balance sheet, basically. Because again, they're subject to the effects of the market just like anybody else. And they do deflect it with some manipulative activities that they do, which Tether does, I think. But at the same time, I think that liability will come back to bite them in the ass. That we won't even have to worry about regulators cracking down on them. Their own inability to fulfill on withdrawals will be enough to collapse them. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And as far as what to play, oh gosh, we got a little bit of 12-Foot Ninja playing in the background. I don't know if I want to go with that route on it. Oh wow, it looks like my program may have seized again. No, cool. Let's go with a little bit of Anthrax. Got the Time here on Coin Metal. And that was Sixth with Wait for Something Wild. And I guess we will all have to do exactly that. Wait for something wild. And I believe being as free as cryptocurrencies are, and as liberated as this market is from controls being placed upon it, that we will see something wild in fact, and that they will be a great part of it. I think that the fact that we are operating in an environment with a floor made of quicksand, and that for multiple reasons there can be shifts in that quicksand at any time for any reason, that building on it is probably not the greatest idea. And I don't mean that you can't do commerce with cryptocurrencies, but the idea of trying to make one into some universal ledger that's going to have everything on everything digital on it, or some other system that is entirely dependent upon somebody else's system work, I think that's very, very unlikely. It creates dangers for you and your customers and everybody else in the economy that simply cannot be tolerated. I think at this point, though, we are going to be winnowing through what cryptocurrencies are. And when I say that, I don't mean like, what they are what they are in a materialist sense. I mean individual cryptocurrencies, what they are. Are they a security? Are they a cryptocurrency as widely recognized by the industry? And I think we're going to find that the majority of these products that a lot of the institutionalism and even some state entities want to bring to market are not fit by comparison to open source, completely open cryptocurrencies. That they all have costs and traits, attributes associated with them that make them more expensive and less reliable, or less functional at least, than open source cryptocurrencies. And it is for that reason that I believe in the longer term they are going to lose out to open source cryptocurrencies, i.e. the next door neighbor's kid, the 14-year-old next door neighbor's kid is perfectly capable of producing a global monetary standard and deploying that unit as they see fit without the say-so or permission of any federal entity. And with that being the reality of the situation, the idea that we're going to corral millions, if not billions of users to solely only using the currencies that we have full regulatory capability over is very, very low, because intrinsically the expense associated with using those cryptocurrencies that are state recognized and state regulated will be prohibitively expensive by comparison to what your next door neighbor's kid can produce and deploy. The cost for participation in cryptocurrencies is by default virtually zero by comparison to, in consideration of the fact that you've already got internet cost services services costs, and of course electricity to keep it all running. So, it does have its own costs, but these are not dependencies that we are solely bound to. That in fact, in the longer term, I believe cryptocurrencies will in fact create the needed incentive, the incentive that we always have needed to invest in things that are not just beneficial for us, but beneficial for the planet at large. But that's just my opinion. In any case, we're going to go ahead and close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. As far as our last dance is concerned, I had loaded this one previously, but I'm going to go ahead and reload it specifically so we can play it as our last dance. And so, if I can get it to play now that I... Damn it, Jim! I'm going to have to find it. I have to select it again. Here it is. Textures, New Horizons, Last Dance here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.